You're listening to Bear Necessities, the podcast all about Coventry Bears Rugby League. On this week's show, we've got all the post-match reaction and analysis from the Bears' frustrating 28-24 defeat away to Oxford from Saturday. We've also got another roar from the Bears community, and we look ahead to our final match of the season this weekend, which comes with added awards and even some added association football. Here we go. Yes, this is Bear Necessities. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, YouTube and Twitter, where we're at Cov Bears Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Dave Musson, and joining me as always is my co-host and former Bears fullback supreme, it's Mr. Craig Cathcart. Craig, what with you being a Liverpool fan as well as a Bears supporter, I'm guessing you just don't like sport much this weekend.
No, it was a very bad weekend. Not only that, on the bus on the way down to the Oxford game, I told everyone to put a bet on Liverpool. So I'm sure there's a few people who are unhappy with me as well.
Oh dear, less said about that, the better, yeah. I think. So sadly the Bears weren't able to back up last week's excellent victory at North Wales Crusaders, and they lost 28-24 away to Oxford. So it's a bit of a story of the game. Oxford scored pretty early on, a couple of minutes in, and they intercepted and ran the length of the field to score a converted try. Bears hit back with Hayden Freeman scoring in the corner after some good work by Matt Reed, that left edge that we've talked about many times on this show, showing its worth again. That brought it back to 6-4. And then there was a try disallowed for Jack Morrison, which we think was possibly for a forward pass, and this was all in the first 12 minutes, so a busy start to the game. And then Bears actually took the lead. Jamal Hunt scored after a quarter of an hour, took the score out to 8 points to 6 in Bears' favour. And then the key point where it all started to unravel for the Bears, really. Oxford scored 3 tries in a row that came from crossfield kicks. And the Bears just didn't deal with them, and that took it out to 18-8. And then Bears made a mistake dropping the ball right on the hooter, which gifted Oxford a try just before half-time. So right on the half-time hooter there. Oxford 24, Bears 8 at half-time. And really sort of that terrible second half of the first half really let the Bears down. But they came out and restored some pride in the second half. Hayden Freeman scored again. To take it to 24-14, and then Matt Reed managed to get another try as well. 24-18 the score now, and at this point the weather just turned into a massive storm and it was all horrendous. And then Oxford managed to score again, although it possibly looked a little bit short of the line. Anyway, the score was given 28-18 to Oxford, and then lots of decisions going against the Bears at really sort of the final quarter of the game. Things just going against the Bears, knock-ons not being given, penalties against the Bears, unlucky stuff from the Bears. They did manage to score again just before the end. Paul Emanuele put in a crossfield kick and Brad Delaney scored, did very well to score it as well, and that was converted to take it to 28-24, but that was the final score, 28-24 to Oxford. So yeah, they're going to be really disappointed, but a better second half, and at least they can take some pride out of it. Clearly a frustrating match for the Bears, and this is what a quite clearly frustrated head coach Tom Tsang made of it all.
So hello Tom, thanks for joining me. So the Bears have gone down 28-24 to Oxford. Bit of a frustrating game today. Poor start in the first half has cost the Bears really.
Yeah, it was a very frustrating first half. Second half game, first of all, I have to give a lot of credit to Oxford. They turned up with what was a very simple game plan. They played. Is a very old sort of rugby league style of game plan. Complete your sets, kick to corners, kick the ball out into touch, put pressure on defensively on us when we were coming out of our half, and try and keep us in our 20 metres, hunt for our errors. And they executed it set after set after set, and the I suppose what they want to get out of that game plan is to frustrate the opposition, and they did it exactly the same last week against Gloucester. And we looked at that, we spoke about that, and so we knew what was going to be coming against us. But like I said, credit to them for coming with a good simple game plan, but then actually executing it for the full game and sticking to it when it was working, because that's something that we haven't done in the past when we've been working to a game plan, not sticking to it. So I've got to give their players a lot of credit, and the coaching staff a lot of credit for being disciplined in that respect. In terms of ourselves, we fell into the trap of getting frustrated with what was happening and not having field position, and so there was a perceived feeling that we needed to do something. We needed to throw a miracle pass or some fancy play to break them down, when realistically all we needed to do was fight fire with fire, complete our own sets, kick long, kick to corners and work hard defensively. But yeah, we didn't really do that very well. So Oxford managed to get some really good opportunities in our half, and they were very good to execute.
Yeah, so Bears conceded just before half-time as well, which would have been disappointing, but came out firing in the second half and actually had, overall had a really good second half performance. I have to say some of the decisions went against the Bears, and just didn't manage to do enough in the end. But actually, I think you can take some positives from the second half performance today.
Yeah, I do feel like a bit of a broken record in some respects, because the tries that we scored, I felt were the best tries on the day. We really, it's things that we've worked on. It's things that we've tried to break down in the opposition and work to our strengths as well. We've got a very, very potent attacking threats on both sides of the field, and we can work to break down defences very well. But if we don't have the attitude that we're willing to work hard defensively more often than not, then it doesn't matter what we do with the ball. So there's positives. There are positives, but at the moment it's back to the drawing board defensively, because we were so good last week that it's frustrating that in 6 days later we've managed to slip back to what we've put out today. But next week against South Wales, it's all on the line. We don't want to be thinking about the possibility of finishing bottom of the league, but it is a possibility, I suppose. So we've put that pressure on ourselves, and it'll be ourselves that gets us out of it.
Yeah, and I don't want to dwell too much on the game today. I want to look forward to next week. I'm confident of a Bears win next week. It's going to be a big home game, final game of the season. So I guess you'll be getting the Bears players fired up for next week, and hopefully a big win for the Bears.
Absolutely. The guys in the squad, they're better than what they put out today, and they know that. There's a lot of individual errors, but there's a lot of sort of lethargy in defence as a team as a whole. So we need to fix that, and we will fix that. And so next week will be a much better outcome.
Thanks very much, Tom. Cheers for that.
No problem.
So, Craig, you could hear in that interview with Tom just how annoyed he was with how that all panned out. And you were at the game, and from the sounds of it, in many ways, I know there were a lot of decisions that seemed to go against the Bears in the second half, and we can get onto that, but it does sound like the Bears were the masters of their own downfall with that poor first half.
Yeah, I have to say we've seen a few games this season where the Bears should have won. This was another one of them. There was some real big lows this season. I mean, the all goals game was a massive low, where everyone was really disappointed. But I think this is the most frustrating out of all the games, just because there was two factors really. There was, as you mentioned, the Bears having a terrible first half really, and conceding too many easy tries and making individual errors, and then the refereeing performance in the second half in particular, which just added to the frustration, because the Bears actually played really well in the second half and should have gone on to win the game. But it was one of those, when you give yourself so much to do in the second half, then you're always going to be struggling to pull it back. And I guess the most frustrating thing is that Oxford, while they played well, they just played a really simple game plan. They didn't do anything out of the ordinary, and they stuck to it, and that's what got them the tries. The Bears scored some absolutely fantastic tries. They were, by far the more creative team, and looked by far the more talented group of players as well. But that doesn't always win you games, as we saw on the weekend. So, yeah, very frustrating.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about the Bears tries, actually, because Tom mentioned it in his interview as well about the quality of the Bears tries. So, at the very least, it still feels like there's plenty of positives to take in terms of the Bears in attack mode.
Yeah, as always. The Bears all season have been very creative going forward, and always make yards, always looking for that extra pass, and scored some really good tries out wide, in very, getting the ball down in very tight corners, and again, we've mentioned him a few times now on the show, but yeah, Matt Reed making some good yards again, and creating tries and scoring himself. There was 2 tries disallowed for the Bears, which I really don't know how they were. The first one was the Jack Morrison one, which, by the looks of it, the referee, who was quite close to the pass, had given it as a try, but it was overruled by the touch judge, who was about 30 yards away, as a forward pass. But it really didn't look like it. I mean, I was level with the pass as it happened, and then there was a kick through that Jamal grounded, which really looked like he had got it down. Again, it's hard to know. It was a very close one. So yeah, and I mean, those would have been both amazing tries, really. Jack ran in from 30 yards, dragging about 3 men on top of him, so as he tends to do. And Jamal as well, really chased down a great kick through, and got it down. But as I said, these things happen in rugby sometimes. You've got to try and deal with it. The main issue was the Bears conceding too many easy tries from those crossfield kicks. It'd be easy to blame individuals, and I wouldn't want to do that. The Bears should have dealt with it better. They should have chased the kicker, for starters. He had far too much time on the ball, and just basically launched it across into the same corner each time. The Oxford player that scored, this is something that they'd obviously trained and planned on. And it's a move they probably do quite a lot. And they've probably scored quite a few tries all season from it. But
yeah, and Tom even mentioned it in his interview, didn't he? He said that they knew that was what was coming, and they still weren't able to deal with it, which makes it even more frustrating.
Yeah, and it's obviously a tactic that works for Oxford, and they just did the same thing each time. I mean, the Bears should have really dealt with it. If it happens once, it's bad. If it happens a couple of times, but as I said, I'm not going to start blaming individual players, because the whole team's got to cotton on to what's happening and try and combat it in some way. But it was one of those things. It was kind of, it was one of those where it felt like for about a 20-minute period the Bears switched off again, which we've seen a few times this season. And Oxford were playing their last home game of the season. They were really up for it. So it was just one of those things. But, on the positives, there was a really good second half. The Bears put in a great performance, nearly pulling it back, and I think probably should have gone on and won, but for a really, dodgy sort of 10-15 minutes, which led to a lot of frustration, where not only were they making mistakes, but they appeared to be getting punished by the referee for some things. I have to say, I'm not going to say it was just the referee, because he was overruled a few times by the linesman, but I guess the referee's got to make those calls. If he's not confident in his own decisions, then he's going to let his linesman overrule him, which I don't think they should. If the referee's better placed, then he should be making the decisions, not the linesman.
Yeah, that's what they're in the middle for, and it's all that kind of things makes it even more frustrating. I was looking in preparation for this podcast, actually, because it feels like there's been a lot of these games that the Bears have lost by not many points. And I was looking through, and I make that the fourth game this season that the Bears have lost by less than a score's difference. And I know there was also a game that Bears lost by 8 points. So if you take those games that were less than a score, and if Bears could have won those, obviously the Bears would be in fourth in the Shield going into the final round of fixtures on 16 points, and it's easier said than done, but I think that does give reasons for optimism for next season, especially if the bulk of this squad can stay together and have a good pre-season. Because I think it's easy to forget just how disrupted the start of the season was for Bears this year, and just how many new faces there are in the squad compared to what we started the season with. So it's fine margins, but it feels like there's still, and I know people might just think we're being disproportionately positive every week, but you've got to look ahead to next season and think that there's something there, definitely. Yeah,
it's a young squad. I think the standard of the league's gone up this year. I think it's harder than ever to get wins in the division, and that's mainly due to Toronto pushing the standards up towards the top end of the league, but everyone else has followed suit. And particularly in the Shield this year, you look at some of the teams that are in the Shield competition, and they would have been challenging in previous years. So I think it's a young squad as well for the Bears, and it was fine margins, but whilst on paper it doesn't look necessarily that progress has been made on the pitch, I genuinely think it has. I think the Bears could have easily got more wins than they did last year. It's all ifs and buts, I know, but they genuinely have put in, for me, some better performances than they did last year. And actually, when you look at it as well, they've very rarely have they come out of a game and not put in a fight. They've pretty much scored in every game they've played as well. And you look at some of the other teams in the league who've been nilled quite a few times. The Bears always seem to create problems for the opposition. So they can just work on a few things in pre-season next year, and maybe work on bringing in a couple of other players and try and keep some of the more experienced heads. And I think we've got to be positive. I mean, there's a few players now that have been around for 2-3 years who getting that experience week in, week out, and are getting better and better. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, reasons to be cheerful. So in case those of you listening haven't seen the other League One results this weekend, they were as follows. So elsewhere in the Shield, South Wales lost at home 54-6 to North Wales. Scholars beat Allgold 16-6. And Hunslet went to Hemel and won 60-16. Now those results mean that the Shield final will be between Scholars and Hunslet. The home team will be decided dependent on this weekend's results, and those results mean that the Bears can't finish bottom of the league even if we do lose to South Wales this weekend, because South Wales are 3 points behind the Bears with only 2 points to play for. And of course, Bears are playing South Wales, so as long as they just win their final home game, then that danger of finishing bottom is completely vanished. In the Super 8s, you've probably seen this, but I'll remind you anyway. Toronto, the Wolfpack, they secured the title and promotion to the championship at the first attempt with a 26-2 win at home to Barrow. So massive congratulations to them, and I do hope our friends at Wolfcast Toronto enjoyed themselves. And elsewhere, results were Doncaster 24, Newcastle 28, Keighley 28, Workington 6, and Whitehaven 26, York 16, which means York are just toying with the emotions of their supporters, and they've still not quite confirmed their place in their final place in the table. Considering they started the Super 8 so well, they have been floundering a little bit of late, but they should just have enough to get through. Right, now it's time for another roar from the Bears community. If you don't remember this feature, this is the part of the show where we hear from different Bears fans each week and find out a bit more about why they follow the Bears. And this week, we're meeting Katie.
So I'm Katie. This is the third season that I've been coming to the Bears with my daughter. We came because we were driving past the ground. She kept saying, I want to go see a rugby game. So we started to come. And favourite player this season, I've got a soft spot for Jack Morrison. Like to see the belly bounce of Jack on the pitch. And also I think Mikey Russell's made a real impact on the team this season. He's a great player. Favourite match, Well, there was a lot of screaming and shouting at the Toronto game, but we watched it from our living room. There was a lot of shouting and clapping, and it was a very exciting game to watch. Yeah, that was probably the highlight because, people were talking about the Bears getting a real drubbing, and they thought they acquitted themselves really, really well. It was very exciting as a fan on the sofa.
So thanks to Katie for an excellent Raw. If you want your Raw heard on this podcast, then tweet us at CovBears Podcast and we will get you on. And while we're talking Twitter, you should also tweet us your questions for Craig using the hashtag AskMrC. Although we've not actually had any this week. However, because we're very professional and very prepared and all of that stuff, I've got one lined up for you instead, Craig. And it covers not only the Bears, but also your other sports team of choice that I mentioned at the top of the show. So here's my question for you.
Yeah.
It's a two-parter. If you could take one player from the current Liverpool football squad and give them a game for the Bears, who would you like it to be and what position would you put them in? And as a flip side, who would you pick from the current Bears squad for a match in the Liverpool team? And again, where would you play them?
Right. Very interesting question.
I should point out at this point as well, because it's quite a tricky question to think about. I've had to think about what my answer would be for my team as well, so I'll throw in my answer at the end, even though it's Ask Mr. C. We'll get a bonus Mr. M answer as well.
Right, so Liverpool player playing for the Bears. I'm going to go for Sadio Mane, and not just because of his head-kicking abilities. His pace and strength would tear it up in League One. I'm pretty sure of it. If he'd be one of these players, you just need to give him the ball and he'll run it in from anywhere. I think he's built to be a rugby player. Obviously, he earns a lot more money as a footballer, but so I don't think he'll be giving that up anytime soon. But yeah,
where would you play him?
Would you choice.
Play him in the back line?
I'd play him on the wing or full back.
Yeah.
Just let him have the ball and let him run it in.
Sounds good.
I'd say run it in from anywhere. He'd be a bit like I don't know. There was a few years ago. There was a winger played for the Bears who also played for Coventry Rugby, Kurt Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
He used to just run the ball in from anywhere. I think he'd be quite similar to him. So, but yeah, Bears players playing for Liverpool, right? Well, the big missing part of the Liverpool team is defensively. Very poor looking, need a centre back. Just looking at the players across the Bears team, I think actually Matt Reid might be a good centre half.
Mm-hmm.
He's big, strong, tall. I can see him heading away those corners that Liverpool keep conceding week in, week out, and so maybe he could give it a go.
Okay, sounds good. So I mentioned I thought about it for my team. So I have the misfortune of supporting Aston Villa, which is probably a bad thing to admit on a podcast about a Coventry sports team, but there we go, it's out now. So I've been thinking about this question as well. So I think that from the current Bears squad, my initial response was to take Brad Delaney because he scores goals and Aston Villa don't tend to score goals.
Yeah.
But I also thought I wouldn't mind having the other Bradley Brennan, just to tell him to flatten any opposition striker who came too close. So that would do me for Bears players in the Villa squad. For the flip side, I've decided I would put John Terry in the middle of the park for the Bears, purely so he gets annihilated by an opposition prop, gets seriously injured, and therefore would never be able to play for us again because it's not working.
I take it you don't like John Terry then?
No, not a fan at all. Anyway, if
You'll
you guys
like him if he scores a winning goal in the FA Cup final for you, I'm sure.
Yeah, and pigs will be flying past the window when that happens, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway, seriously, if you guys out there have a question for Mr. C, don't forget you can tweet it to us using hashtag AskMrC to CovBears Podcast, and I'll ask it for you. And it can be about anything, so give it a shot. Okay, it's almost time for us to sign off for another show, but not before we remind you to enter our competition to win the signed Toronto Wolfpack scarf, which of course was kindly donated by Chris and Dario from Wolfcast Toronto, who are probably still partying about the fact that their team has got promotion. And yeah, it's been signed by the entire Wolfpack squad. That is the League One winning squad. We should now add to that. So if you want to win this scarf, this piece of rugby league history, let's be frank, all you need to do is email covbearspodcast@gmail.com by this Friday, the 15th of September, and just tell us the name of the Wolfpack's home stadium. It's as easy as that. You can find it on Google. You can go and Google it right now while you carry on listening to the rest of this podcast. Someone is definitely going to win this scarf. We're not keeping it, and it could be you, but only if you send us an email. So do get involved. And another reminder for you, if you've not already, definitely listen to last week's episode of the League One show, which is the unofficial podcast for League One and friends of ours as well. So right at the end of last week's show, the Bears CEO Alan Robinson spoke to them about the Bears link up with the Midlands Hurricanes, which was announced a few weeks ago. It's really exciting and interesting to hear what the Bears are doing to help the game grow in the local region. So yeah, did you manage to check that interview out, Craig? Just out of interest.
Yeah, it was really good. Al, as he always does, spoke really well. The League One show, the guys there were genuinely impressed with what's happening. And we've said before in previous shows that the Bears are hamstrung a little bit by the pool of players that they get to choose from. This is to try and mitigate against that and try and produce talent and give young players in the region as well an opportunity to play for a professional club. That it's only got to be a good thing, and hopefully some of the community clubs will get on board as well, and we can create this, the Bears can create this pathway from sort of under 14, under 16 all the way through to League One. I think I was watching the whole game at the weekend, and they were saying that in the whole team there's something like 9 or 10 local lads in the squad, and that's because they have a joint academy with Hull KR, and they're trying to produce this talent coming through. And it just shows if you do something like that and you do it for a few years and you stick with it, it starts to produce, good young players. And it'd be just brilliant to see the Bears have, pretty much a team full of local Midlands-based players, putting it in, week out, and, helping the team climb the league.
Yeah. Say it again for the second time this episode. Reasons to be cheerful. So only one more thing left for us to do, and that is to look ahead to this weekend's final game of the season, the visit of South Wales Iron Men to the Butts Park Arena. So kick-off for this one is at 3:30, but there's plenty more on offer for you other than, hopefully, a 5th Bears win of the year. So after the game, there's going to be the Bears end of season awards. Well, before the game, you've also got the opportunity to watch a completely different sport in the form of fellow Butts Park Arena tenants Coventry United Football Club as they play against Bromsgrove. So the deal for the day, gates open at 10:45, football kicks off at midday, and then there will be a bit of literal moving of the goalposts, and I'm guessing maybe a bit of line painting as well before the Bears kick off at 3:30. So Craig, before we talk about the game, it's quite an exciting way to round off a season, isn't it? With literally a whole bit of other sport before it and some entertainment afterwards as well.
Yeah, it's a really, really brilliant idea, very innovative by the Bears and by Coventry United to come up with this idea. And I'm really looking forward to it. I mean, I've been looking at Coventry United and I've been following them on Twitter and on YouTube and everything else. And I've been planning for a long time now to go up and see them since they moved to the Butts Park Arena. They're a very progressive football club. They want to move up through the leagues and do as well as they can. And, I'm quite excited to go and watch that. And I think it would be a great thing to do again, and hopefully it's successful, and hopefully it's something we can do, the Bears can do again in future. I'm not sure there's many other rugby league clubs that do something similar. I guess possibly Doncaster have done it. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think they have.
They share with a football club, but not many people have done it. So it sounds like a really good plan. And also, let's hope that quite a few of the football fans stay to watch some rugby league and get exposed to it and start coming up to some Bears games as well.
Yeah. So on to the game itself. So we've already said the Bears can't finish bottom, so that should take some of the pressure off. Obviously we both want to see a Bears win, but what are you thinking about what would you really like to see on the pitch for this last game of the season, last game at home, last game of the year? What do you want from those Bears players?
Well, I think as I just mentioned, we might have quite a few new people to watching the game who've not seen rugby league before. So I'm hoping that the Bears players will relax and play their own game, and that we see a free-flowing game of rugby that we know they're capable of. They've done it, for 20-minute periods throughout the season. I'd love to see them put something like that together for 80 minutes and get a big win on the board and get a few tries shared out amongst the team, and get something for the fans to cheer about and get behind them. I think it's crucial to finish the season on a high. And, as I said, I'm really looking forward to it. It should be a good game.
And, of course, with it being the last game of the season as well, and we should probably say we're unlikely to be podcasting all the way throughout the winter because we're going to struggle to find things to talk about. So we've probably only got a couple more podcasts left before we take a bit of a break as well. I know that for the last few weeks, there's possibly been a few names that maybe get mentioned more than others, mainly the guys who have been scoring the tries in the last couple of weeks and kicking the goals. So people like Brad Delaney and Hayden Freeman and Matt Reed have been getting a lot of mentions recently. But in terms of if people are listening and want some other names to look out for, perhaps some of the more unsung heroes that have even gone under our radar in terms of when we're thinking immediately after a match, are there any players you think people should look out for this weekend who we perhaps haven't given as big of a shout out to as we perhaps might have done in these first few episodes of the podcast?
Yeah, I think I tend to overlook a lot of the hard work that goes on in the second rows and the loose forward. So Kieran Sherritt's been brilliant recently. He's a local lad. He always puts his body on the line and puts in a good performances. There's Chris Barrett. I think he the top appearance holder for the Bears.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
Yeah, he puts his body on the line every week, and he's an ever present. There's at hooker as well. There's Billy Gaylor. I think perhaps Brad Delaney and Jamal and Paul Emanuele get the plaudits mainly, more so in the halfbacks. But Billy's played pretty much every game this season and has done really well. There's also in the centre as well. There's Jason Bass. Perhaps doesn't get as many mentions as Matt, but he's every week he's a solid performer. Does really well, and actually you can see his game has really progressed this season. So I'd like to see him around next season as well. Those are the sorts of guys, and these guys. We've only been covering the Bears sort of for the second half of this season, haven't we? But you can really see these guys. They're not on huge amounts of money or anything, but they put their bodies on the line and they really, really do care about winning. I have every confidence that if we can keep this group of players together, that they'll for next year that they'll do really well. I would even go as we always have a strong bench as well at the Bears, and there's players who turn up to be 18th man. And you can see them supporting the team and trying to support their fellow players as well. So everyone does it. Everyone puts it together. As you said, we tend to focus, I guess, on the players that score the points and some of the standout sort of performers. Myself, I tend to watch the back three because that's where I played whenever I was playing. Keep an eye out for everyone that we've mentioned, and as I said, hopefully a big performance this weekend.
Essentially, anyone who's wearing a Bears shirt, just cheer really loudly for them.
Yeah. They all get our support.
They certainly do. So, predictions time. Of course, South Wales, we shouldn't forget, South Wales beat the Bears by 2 points earlier in the season with a bit of a last-minute heartbreak. And I know we're both going to predict a win. I'm going for Bears by 8 points. What are you saying, Craig?
I think it'll be more. I think the Bears will be fired up for this. We've got 2 ex-South Wales players. We've got Zach Williams and also Paul Emanuele. I think one thing to say as well, I think the Bears missed, Zach was missing at the weekend. I think the Bears missed him last weekend. His work rate is massive. He puts in a shift every week. I think Paul Emanuele, he obviously stayed with South Wales for a long time, and he was the heartbeat of the club, but he'll be really wanting to put in a big performance as well. And I think a lot of the players will want to go out on a high. My feelings, I think the Bears will have too much for South Wales, who've got a long trip to get to Coventry. But they'll be wanting to finish the season, a difficult season for them, on a high as well. So, but I'm going to go the Bears by probably 15.
Oh, big talking there.
Bold, yeah.
Cool. Okay, well, we'll see which one of us is closer. I hope you're closer, to be honest. And that is pretty much it for another show. So do join us next week for all the reaction to that final game. We might throw in a bit of news from the end of season awards as well, if we can blag away in and record some stuff. Craig, thanks as always for your time, and I will see you at the Butts Park Arena on Saturday.
Yes, looking forward to it, Dave.
Bare Necessities is a podcast about the Coventry Bears. It's an independent show, but it wouldn't be possible without the support and the encouragement of the club. So huge thanks to everyone at the Bears for helping us out. Come and say hi to us on Twitter, where we're at CovBearsPodcast. Tweet Craig your questions using hashtag AskMrC, and let us know if you want to have your roar heard. Don't forget to subscribe to the show in Apple Podcasts, Stitcher or wherever else. And if you like the show, leave us a rating or review and spread the word to anyone else who loves the Bears. Bare Necessities is brought to you by me, Dave Musson, and Craig Cathcart, and our theme music is by my band Wave. See you next time.